So picture this. I'm on Reddit one evening. I'm just browsing, having a good time, not looking to buy any mouse or anything, just, chilling. And I come across this post talking about Pulsar's newest mouse. It is called the Pulsar X2 CRAZYLIGHT. It's a $120 mouse. Comes in at 35 grams, and it has all in-house Pulsar internals. How do you pass up something like that? Well, today we haven't, because we're doing a review on it. You know, I had to get it. I really have a problem at this point. So first off, some disclaimers. I have no affiliation with Pulsar. They actually probably despise me because when the original X2 came out, I was one of the most annoying people on Twitter telling them to fix their QA and get their head out of their ass and refund people, etc. So if they were ever to put two and two together that person was me, I might be on a blacklist of sorts. However, my opinion of Pulsar has been changed quite greatly from this mouse, and we'll talk about that a little bit in this video. Also, I do want to apologize a bit for being a little late with this video. I really wanted to take my time with this mouse and kind of get to know it a little bit for my own use personally, and also for the video. I wanted to know where its downsides were, mostly because Pulsar is a company that, in my eyes, has had a little bit of a rocky reputation with some of their mouse launches, and I wanted to really take some time with it and make sure that it was of good quality. But let's start off with the weight, because it is in fact crazy light, coming in at 35 grams if you use dot skates, about 38 to 39 grams if you use the full-size PTFE skates, both of which are included in the box, so that's really cool. And it's even lighter than the WL mouse Beast X, which is amazing because all the other mice that I know that are in this category or lighter, like the HSK Pro, that mouse is like half the size and is all holes. And then you have the WL mouse Beast X or the Final Mouse ULX, and those have holes. So how did Pulsar get the mouse this light without having any holes? Well, as you can see in the bottom here, you do see some holes, like there's holes underneath the skates. However, you can also see in there that the internals have been kind of remodeled. There is almost zero excess PCB here, and that definitely is going to save up a lot on weight. We'll talk about some other ways that they've saved some weight here, but you can also see on the buttons, there's no like plastic enclosures. There's just no excess anything. Nothing unnecessary is on this mouse. So it's been totally optimized for weight. And, I promised I wouldn't do my pinch tests anymore because even I'll admit they were extremely unnecessary. But, just squeezing on this mouse a little bit, this is more than what would be reasonable during actual use. But just to kind of like stress test the mouse a bit, it's solid. So you're not sacrificing on build quality here. So yeah, it is in fact crazy light, but I don't want to hark on it too much because there are some extraordinary things about this mouse that isn't the weight. Most importantly being the performance and the Pulsar internals. So the Pulsar internals, we'll talk about the performance first. That's going to be Pulsar's new sensor. Now, I'll just show some gameplay of me playing with this mouse. It feels incredibly good to use. At my setup, it is a little bit difficult. You might notice me jittering a lot and shaking. That's just because this mouse is incredibly light and I play on a glass pad. I've never played with anything this light. I am really pleased with the performance of this mouse. It feels really good, really intuitive. So performance wise, the sensor is on par with things like the 3950, so the top tier PixArt sensor. I'm not going to go into specs because at this point, at this caliber of sensor, they're all pretty much indistinguishable. I've never had it like slide out or spin out on glass pads or anything, but that's the sensor. It is insanely top tier. Again, it feels insanely high performance. The next Pulsar internal is the new switches, and this is what I think is the most remarkable thing because this is an entirely custom Pulsar optical switch, and I actually like it. For those who have never watched one of my videos before, I talk about very frequently how much I hate optical switches. I don't really like Razer optical switches. I wish they would use their mechanical switches. I really hate how everything is actually switching to opticals because to me they feel and sound like garbage. Whether it be Razer's optical switches, Omron opticals, Kale opticals, or any other optical switch, I genuinely fucking hate it. I have never tried an optical switch that feels as good as a mechanical switch or sounds as good. That's not the case with this new Pulsar switch. This is actually the first optical switch that I will say is one of my favorite switches in general, not even my favorite optical switch, which it in fact is. And I will just say this is objectively the best optical switch on the market. I am that confident about how good this is. It's light, it's crispy. These are the optical switches on the G Pro X, which I want to compare the sound so you can kind of get an idea. These were my previous favorite optical switches, not because of how they sound. Even feel-wise, they are a bit heavy for my taste, but they are really, really tactile and crisp. And so that's why I like these the most. And I just want to do a little sound comparison going back and forth. Okay, so this is what the switches on the GPX sound like. And then we're going to move on to the X2 CRAZYLIGHT switches. And just for reference, this is what the pre-sorted KLGX switches sound like coming from my OP18K. So yeah, as you can see, the switches in the Pulsar X2 CRAZYLIGHT sound really good, and they feel just as good. Honestly, these are fantastic switches coming from Pulsar. Congratulations for making the first genuinely good optical switch. Let's move on. So some other things that I'll talk about, but I'm not going to really go on too much. The side buttons are pretty good. They have a little bit of post travel, but it's nothing too crazy. Scroll wheel is good too. It's pretty light. It's pretty tactile, maybe a little bit on the, I guess, soft side. And the click in is nice and tactile as well. It doesn't require too much force, but I don't think you're going to accidentally press it. The stock skates that come with the mouse are pretty good. The PTFE style skates, the full-size ones, are the better of the two, I would say. However, I choose to use the X-Ray Pad Obsidian skates. These are some of my favorite skates in general. Definitely my favorite dot skates. But let's move on to some of the cons of this mouse, which there are only one big one in like one or two nitpicks. So the big con I wanted to talk about, stop focusing on the Logitech mouse. So the big con I wanted to talk about with the Pulsar X2 CRAZYLIGHT is the battery and the fact that it's almost non-existent. So I don't have exact numbers or anything like that. Again, I think they're being cagey about the battery life here specifically because it is so bad. However, personal experience wise, at 4 kilohertz or 8 kilohertz, rather, sorry, 8 kilohertz battery life, I did about a 2 to 3 hour session on Apex Legends. And I went from about 80% battery to about 45%. So that's a little bit of a picture as to how long this battery life lasts. My personal use, at 1 kilohertz, I was able to get it to about that week mark before I needed to charge it. But again, that's going to be varying depending on how much you use it per day or whatever. All I'm going to say is don't expect it to be an insanely good battery. You are going to have to charge it quite frequently. It's their smallest battery that they could possibly use in the mouse, specifically because of weight. So this is yet another way that they've kind of conserved the weight here. And yeah, it's just going to be a trade-off. Me personally, I don't think it's that bad. This is obviously a very performance-focused mouse, so it's going to be as light as it needs to be, regardless of battery life. So I think it is a worthy trade-off in this mouse, but some people aren't going to want to charge their mouse that often, which I totally understand. Another con I can think of, this is going to be extremely nitpicky, but this is exclusively in the X2 mini shape. So for me personally, I have kind of like, I don't want to say large hands. However, I have 21 by 11.5 centimeter hands, so probably like medium to large hands. I can get a pretty comfortable grip on it. However, I feel like if it was any shorter, I'd probably be having some issues because my right pinky right there, as you can see, is kind of far back. But I do know that there are a lot of people with similar hand sizes to mine that cannot use small mice. And if that's the case, then I don't think you should probably get this mouse. I think it might be too small for you. Maybe they'll release an X2 CRAZYLIGHT medium version, to which case I'd get that one. However, I think it probably would be a little bit heavier than this one. So again, a little bit more of a trade-off. So that's why I wanted to think of it as a con, because I don't think it's going to be as accessible as the medium shape is, but it's not a problem for me. So there you go. And so lastly, I just want to talk about the quality control on this mouse. Pulsar is kind of known to have some QC issues with a lot of their launches. However, this one, I have had 0 issues. Now, I've also had 0 issues with the X2 V2, which did have some issues at launch. I had 0 issues with an X2H, and that also had issues at launch. So you sample size of 1, this one's really good. I have also looked far and wide on Reddit and YouTube, and I cannot find a single video, a single post, a single comment on a post on anything saying that someone has had a quality control issue. It has been 3 weeks. I think at this point we can say that this is a solid mouse from Pulsar, build quality and everything. That was one of Pulsar's weakest points for me, was their quality control. And with this mouse in particular, I don't think that's an issue. I can wholeheartedly recommend this mouse because I think I said at the beginning, $120 is what this costs. You get the 8 kilohertz dongle, you get all the skates, you get the insanely light mouse, one of the lightest mice on the market, period. Now that they've fixed their QC, I don't really feel like that there's any sort of compromise here. I mean, the battery life, of course, being the biggest con, a couple of other nitpicks here and there. I think Pulsar might have just released definitely top 5 mouse of the year, and we're just getting started. Definitely, if you guys are looking for a new mouse, give this thing a look. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys later.